Welcome, Cindy Gallop. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Thrilled to have you here. And you're calling in from New York, aren't you?
I am indeed. I'm in my apartment in Midtown Manhattan.
Incredible. Where did you grow up? It wasn't New York, was it?
No, I was born in the UK. My father was English, my mother was Malaysian Chinese. And when I was 6, we moved to Brunei in Borneo. So I grew up in Asia.
Incredible, incredible. And so I've seen on your Instagram, and you're known for blowing shit up. What are you blowing up about right now?
I'll just explain to our listeners that what you're alluding to is my personal bio, which you can see across all my social channels, which says, I like to blow shit up. I'm the Michael Bay of business. And where that came from is I support myself alongside my business by doing business consulting, personal coaching, public speaking. And years ago, I was talking to some potential consultancy clients about my approach to consulting. And so I explained that I consult very selectively, only for clients and brands who want to change the game in their particular sector. So you come to me for radical, innovative, groundbreaking, transformative. I don't do status quo. Then I lightheartedly, off the cuff, went, I like to blow shit up. I am the Michael Bay of business. And everyone laughed, and I left the room, and I thought, actually, that's a really good way of summing up what I do. And so I've been using that line ever since. But I don't use that line as a bit of whimsy, a bit of creativity, a bit of fun. I use it entirely deliberately because I'm a big fan of be your own filter. When I characterize what I do in that way, it attracts to me the people who want what I do. It repels the ones who don't. And I want to repel the ones who don't because they're a waste of time, effort, and money. So I continue to blow shit up for my business consulting clients. I continue to blow shit up my personal coaching clients. I blow shit up on stage in my public speaking. And obviously, I'm blowing shit up with my business, Make Love, Not Porn.
I love this. And you blew it up in your TED talk, didn't you? I listened to that, and you were one person who has said "come on my face" 6 times in a TED talk. Would you mind like sharing like what was your talk about for listeners that haven't tuned in, and why were you so bold in that?
Sure. Listeners, I have a business called Make Love, Not Porn. And it came about as a complete and total accident. I did not consciously, intentionally set out to do anything I very bizarrely find myself doing today. It came about because I date younger men, and I'm just going to contextualize that for our audience as well, because I am somebody who has never ever wanted to be married. I have never wanted children. Very glad that I always knew that as opposed to finding out the hard way by having them. I adore being single. I'm not a relationship person. I cannot wait to die alone, and I date younger men casually and recreationally for sex. And I'm deliberately very public about all of that because we don't have enough role models in our society, for women and for men, by the way, that demonstrate you can live your life very differently to the way that you're expected to and still be amazingly happy. And I'm one of the happiest people I know. So there I was dating younger men 18, 19 years ago when I began realizing through having sex with younger men that I was experiencing very personally and intimately what happens when two things converge. And I stress the dual convergence because most people think it's only one thing. I realized I was experiencing what happens when today's total freedom of access to hardcore pornography online meets our society's equally total reluctance to talk openly and honestly about sex. It's when those two factors converge that porn becomes sex education by default, in not a good way. Now, I'm a naturally action-oriented person. I went, gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. I didn't know that because 18, 19 years ago, nobody was talking about this. Nobody was writing about it. This was me in isolation going, I'm going to do something about this. So nearly 17 years ago now, I put up on no money a tiny clunky website at makelovenotporn.com that in its original version was kind of a public service announcement. Porn world versus real world. Here's what happens in the porn world. Here's what really happens in the real world. As you said, I launched it at TED in 2009. My talk went viral, and it drove this extraordinary global response to my tiny, clunky website that I had never anticipated. And by the way, Sarah, to your question, I've been going to TED for many years. And, this is, as I say, nearly 17 years ago. This is before actually TED.com really blew up. And so, it's funny to look back now all these years later, but, two things indicate how long ago this was. The first is that, as far as I was concerned, I was only talking to the people in the room at TED. I was not thinking that that talk would live on, go viral, still be watched by millions of people today. And the second thing is, and again, this will give you some idea of how long ago this was, TED did not rehearse me before I gave that talk. So they didn't know what I was going to say. And by the way, that talk would never happen today, because now they rehearse the hell out of everybody who sets foot on that stage.
Maybe
And that was obviously part of the revelation for the audience and everybody who then, watched the talk online. But basically, thousands of people wrote to me all those years ago from all around the world, young and old, men and female, straight and gay, pouring their hearts out, telling me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they never told anyone before. And I realized I'd uncovered a huge global social issue. And so that was when I turned Make Love Not Porn into what it is today, a business designed to do good and make money simultaneously, which is what I believe all business should be. And so today we are the world's first and only user-generated, importantly 100% human-curated social sex video sharing platform. We're kind of what Facebook would be if it allowed you to openly, healthily, socially, sexually self-express, which it clearly does not. The way to think about us is, if porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the badly needed documentary. We are a unique window onto the funny, messy, loving, wonderful sex we're all having in the real world. And what we're doing is we are socializing, normalizing, destigmatizing sex, bringing it out of the shadows into the sunlight to promote consent, communication, good sexual values and behavior. We are literally sex education through real world demonstration.
So who chooses, how do people choose to put their videos online? How you get marketing yourself out there? I first came across you in a podcast interview I did with Pineapple Support founder Leah Tannett. So she has a mental health charity for porn stars. And she mentioned your work and mentioned what you were doing and referenced that on the podcast. But for the average person, I'm guessing, Make Love Not Porn is not out there like OnlyFans is out there.
So here's what's infuriating, Sarah, because as I say, I launched Make Love Not Porn as a business 13 years ago now. And by the way, I pitched the idea of it for 2 years, from 2009 post my TED Talk to 2011, because that's how long it took me to find one angel investor willing to put up the seed funding to build the platform. If I had been able to raise the funding I was looking for all those years ago, we'll be looking at a very different picture in the world today. And I concepted Make Love Not Porn's revenue share business model many years before OnlyFans in order to democratize access to income. So at Make Love Not Porn, our members pay to subscribe, rent, and stream social sex videos. Half that revenue goes to our contributors, whom we call our Make Love Not Porn stars. And the thing I didn't realize all those years ago, embarking on this, was that I and my tiny team would fight an enormous battle every single day, not even to grow Make Love Not Porn, just to keep it alive. Basically because every piece of business infrastructure other tech startups take for granted, we can't. The small print always says no adult content. And that's all pervasive across every area of the business. First of all, I can't get funded. And it's worth making our audience aware that OnlyFans was started by the Stokely family, who had already built a ton of camming businesses, had no problem raising funding as white men, in this industry. I represent the triple whammy of unfundability. I'm female, I'm older, and I have a sex tech business. And by the way, I actually represent the quadruple whammy of unfundability. I'm a woman of color, I'm half Chinese, but I'm white passing, so I don't include that in my obstacles. So can't get funded, can't get banked. Earlier this year, Make Love Not Porn was debanked 3 times in 2 months. 3 banks kicked us out, one after the other. Fortunately, we have now found a 4th bank that welcomed us, but that was a very stressful few months. In 2025, any text service I need to use to operate a video platform, hosting, encoding, encrypting, the terms of service always say no adult content. And my 2 biggest pain points are, number one, payments. PayPal won't work with adults, Stripe won't, mainstream fintech won't. I have to work with the murky subculture of adult-friendly payment processors who, because anybody adult has nowhere else to go, charge extortionate fees. I pay out 12% of my revenue every month in payment processing fees alone. That's a massive business growth inhibitor. And my other business growth inhibitor is that I am banned from advertising Make Love Not Porn anywhere. We cannot advertise on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Google, YouTube, Reddit. Look at what's on Reddit. Reddit bans Make Love Not Porn from advertising. Twitter, X, look at what's on X. They ban us from advertising there. And what is infuriating about that is, we are banned from doing paid search ads on Google. But every day, all around the world, people search for Make Love Not Porn without knowing that we exist. And what I mean by that is the top organic search terms that send traffic to us are make love, not porn, real sex, not porn, video sexo na porno, make love, not porn, where they don't know there's a company actually called that. One young man told me that he found us when he Googled porn that is not porn. He was so fed up with everything out there, wanted something different, had no idea what to search for. Fortunately, search porn that is not porn, you find Make Love Not Porn. That is how much the world wants what we do. The documentary to porn's Hollywood movie knows it needs us, but we are unable to make them aware of us by the conventional means.
So how many users do you have subscribed currently?
So over the 13 years we've been operating, we've had 3 million people sign up in totality. We have a much smaller paying member base, and that's because, again, we are unable to do targeted marketing promotion. Our growth is organic, but that means it's very random. We're a global platform. We get a ton of traffic from countries like Brazil, India, China, whose economy is completely out of whack with our business model. But we have, an active, dedicated subscriber base of, in total, around 20,000 paying members, and then we have people beyond that who dip in and out, But essentially, what I'm doing, Sarah, is because I'm so infuriated at the barriers we face, and it's worth making our audience aware that our mission at Make Love Not Porn ultimately is to help end rape culture globally. Now, that may sound like a very big mission, but we have 13 years of proof of concept at a micro level. We help end rape culture by doing something very simple that nevertheless nobody else anywhere is doing. We show you how wonderful great, consensual, communicative, loving sex is in the real world. Our social sex videos role model good sexual values, good sexual behavior. And here's the key part. We make all of that aspirational versus what you see in porn and popular culture. One man left a comment saying, "This video makes me want to be a better man in the bedroom and in life." We can do that. And so because I'm so enraged about the barriers we face, I'm a great believer that when you have a truly world-changing startup, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way around. If the ecosystem that is meant to enable you to scale and thrive shuts you out, build your own ecosystem. Because every business obstacle I encounter is a huge disruptive money-making business opportunity in itself. So I have a product roadmap for Make Love Not Porn, which I'm gradually working my way through sequentially to build. At the heart of it is Make Love Not Porn, sex tech, very challenging to raise funding for. And around it are 4 products that are infrastructure: an edtech product, a fintech product, an adtech product, and an AI product. Because I'm all about building solutions to my own problems that everybody else can also use to help everybody else grow their business as well.
Incredible. So tell me a little bit about the users that upload onto the software. How have they come about, and why do they come to upload content? They're obviously not trained porn stars as we see on OnlyFans or, other porn movies.
No, no, nobody's performing. This is the Facebook of social sex. This is a privileged, intimate glimpse into real world people's real world sex lives. So, when I had this revolutionary concept, as I say, nearly 17 years ago now, took 2 years to get it going because I had to find the funding. When I found the funding, that enabled me to, hire a tiny team, build a platform, and then obviously pre-launching Make Love Not Porn, we had to pre-seed the platform with content. So I and my then curator Sarah spent a whole year asking our entire networks and complete strangers, will you film yourselves having real world sex for us? So every time I had a conversation about Make Love Not Porn, I would always end it by asking the question, would you be willing to contribute content? And I would always ask this, regardless of whether I personally thought the person I was talking to would or wouldn't, which is how I find out that 99.9% of the time the answer is yes. To the extent that there were moments when I literally had to force my facial features to remain immobile because I want to go, what? The desire to do this lies a lot closer to the surface than many more people than you would ever have thought. And given a reason, given our social mission, social values, people jump at the chance. So our Make Love Not Porn stars are a massive spectrum, all ages 18 to 80, all races, ethnicities. We're a global platform: male, female, trans, non-binary, straight, LGBTQ, asexual. But what they all have in common is these are everyday people who also want to see more open, healthy dialogue around attitudes towards behaviors around sex. And everybody has their own personal path to us. So, for example, we have a number of Make Love Not Porn stars who tell us they came to us out of religious repression. So, one couple, they're based in Southern California over here in the US, and they were both they both came from very fundamentalist Christian backgrounds. Married very young, both virgins, and they came across a mention of Make Love Not Porn in a magazine somewhere, and they said to each other, "We have to do this to overcome the shame that's been imposed on us by our repressive religious upbringing." So they videoed themselves having sex for the first time ever, shared it on our platform, and it was a complete breakthrough for them and their relationship. And we have a number of Make Love Not Porn stars who tell us very similar stories. Then we have, this is especially interesting because as a unique business, Make Love Not Porn has unique capability. We have the power to change people's sexual attitudes and behavior for the better in a way that nothing else can. So in addition to, over the past 13 years, teaching countless young people that porn is not sex in the real world, Gen Z loves us, we've saved numerous marriages and relationships. Literally have people write to us, "You saved my marriage." We've inspired communications breakthroughs of couples around sex. But as with any disruptive technology, use cases emerge the founder never dreamt of. So I was blown away when we began hearing from survivors of rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse. We hear from female survivors, male survivors, trans, non-binary survivors. They tell us that Make Love Not Porn helped them reclaim their bodies. We help them feel able to be sexual again post-trauma in a situation where porn is way too triggering. And it's not just people who watch our videos. So we have a number of Make Love Not Porn stars who tell us being able to share themselves sexually in a completely safe and trustworthy space has helped them process and heal from sexual trauma. That's not a use case I ever envisaged when I came up with this idea. I'm so happy and grateful that it is. And, I'll give you one example. We have a wonderful Make Love Not Porn star couple. They're called Everyday Eros. That's their handle on Make Love Not Porn. And again, what I'm describing are things you will never find anywhere else. So they recently decided to have their first ever threesome where they brought another man into their relationship. And the husband was interested in exploring his bisexuality. I had never done so before, and this is the real world. So I recommend to our listeners, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, go and check out Everyday Eros on Make Love Not Porn, because this is a multi-part video series they shared. Because what you see on Make Love Not Porn is the real world version of threesomes. So you see all the negotiation, the sensitivity, the empathy, the checking in, the taking care of each other that happens in the real world when you are trying something completely new as an experiment. But what you will also see, because again, we are so grateful, our Make Love Not Porn stars, for being so generous and willing to share their most intimate moments. And so what you will see in these videos is there was a moment when, the husband had sexual abuse in his background. And there was a moment in this threesome that came up that was very triggering for him. And so, they stopped everything. They took a break. They worked this through with him. You will never see that in porn. And so there are, as I say, our Make Love Not Porn stars make their way to us through their own personal journey. We have a ton of solo Make Love Not Porn stars. We have tons of masturbation videos. And, I remember years ago, a young man found us, and he shared his first video, which was a solo masturbation video. And he said in his intro video, because we invite all our contributors to contextualize their videos with intro videos that are kind of trailers, but not, because they're free to do whatever they want in them. So he said, growing up, porn massively impacted his relationships, his view of himself, his perspective on sex. He said he was 20-something at the time. He was still recovering from that. He said, I came across this platform, this community. Oh, my God, I've been looking for this all my life. I'm just blown away by it. And so I really wanted to give back to the community. I wanted to share a video in return, but I'm single at the moment. So he thought, okay, I can't make a video with a partner. I'll make a video myself. So he filmed himself masturbating for the first time ever. And he said that just doing that made him love himself more. It enhanced his sexual sense of self, his sexual self-esteem. We hear this a lot from our solo Make Love Not Porn stars. And what is wonderful is that young man has been with us almost since the beginning. So in due course, he met someone, fell in love, but with some trepidation, he said to her, look, there's this thing I do on this platform called Make Love Not Porn. What do you think about sharing a video of the two of us? And at first she was going, whoa, and then she eased into the idea. They shared their first video, and then they told us on the Make Love Not Porn star meetup, but because we have regular meetups for our community. This is on a Zoom one. We used to do it IRL. With the pandemic, we began using Zoom. And he said, now she's even more enthusiastic about this than I am. She tells all her friends, come and watch us on Make Love Not Porn. And so that is wonderful as well. We are an integral part of people's everyday intimate lives.
So I want to rewind a little bit back to how you kind of did some market research and experimentation with 20-year-olds. Was that for Make Love Not Porn, or was this a lifestyle choice that you've chosen?
So I'm, as our listeners heard, Make Love Not Porn was a complete accident. Dating younger men was also a complete accident. I did not intentionally set out to do that. And how that happened was, my background is 40 years working in advertising, which, by the way, is very useful for what I do now, because I've spent 40 years working in the business of getting people to do things they originally had no intention of doing. Anyway, I used to run an advertising agency here in New York. And this is now something like 23 years ago. We were asked to pitch for an online dating brand that had launched in the UK and wanted to expand to the US and take on Match, the market leader at the time. And in the advertising industry, when you pitch for a client's business, you have to experience the client's product and the entire competitive landscape. So we all had to online date. And this was 23 years ago, and none of us on the pitch team at the agency ever had, because it wasn't a thing back then. It was very much an emerging, tech sector. So the rest of my pitch team at the agency were all already married, living with somebody, dating. So they all went online as fake personas. They created false profiles. I was single. I thought, I have to do this for business reasons. Why not do it for real? Why not find out what this whole online dating thing is all about? So I posted my profile on a bunch of sites, including our clients. I was very honest about everything, including my age. 23 years ago, I was 42. And much to my surprise, I got an avalanche of responses, which was very good for the ego. But 75% of those responses were from younger men. And the vast majority of those were from much younger men. And I suddenly realized that I was every young guy's fantasy. I was an attractive older woman, high-flying career, did not want, as I've said, to get married, didn't want to settle down. I just wanted to have some fun, which at the time, I had just started up an advertising agency in the world's toughest advertising marketplace, Madison Avenue. I was working 24/7, traveling all the time. I mean, fun was not happening. So I went, wow, had not considered this as a dating strategy, works for me. And that's how I started dating younger men and have been doing so very happily for the past 23 years.
So you still date 20-year-old men now?
Absolutely.
Do you have one partner or are you still in a season of dating
Oh,
around?
no, I mean, I am, as I said earlier, I'm not a relationship person. I am that very rare person that has absolutely no desire whatsoever to be in love. And so, date younger men, casually, recreationally, simultaneously. I have a number of younger men, and I'm enormously fond of all of them.
Do they all know about each other?
They're fully aware that, this is my approach.
And so on a personal level, do you think there's any way that they may think that you're objectifying them
Oh, no,
in dating those?
no, not at all, because and actually, again, I've talked about this publicly for years because I am nobody's definition of a cougar. And I'm very keen to kind of reinvent the popular understanding of that term. So, as I said, I date young men casually, recreationally. I meet them on cougar dating sites. But I've one fundamental criterion. No matter how casual the relationship, they have to be a very nice person. I have fantastic radar for very nice people. As a result, I only date utterly lovely younger men in an atmosphere of mutual trust, respect, affection, liking. And so, rather ironically, my so-called casual relationships go on a lot longer than most people's so-called committed ones. So I date younger men off and on over periods of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years. They may go on to date women their own age. They may go on to marry women their own age. We stay friends. We like each other. We might meet platonically for coffee or drinks. Every so often those relationships end, every so often those marriages end, they come back. It's very nice. I'm friends with a ton of them on Facebook. I'm connected with a ton of them on LinkedIn. We continue to talk years later. It's really nice. We like each other.
Is there like a certain archetype of younger guy who goes on these cougar websites where you um, are present?
Here's what's really interesting, Sarah. Even I, who champion this relationship model, even I am gobsmacked by the number of younger men on cougar dating sites who want to date older women. And when I say date, I mean date. They don't all just want to have sex with older women. And I think the reason that even I am taken aback, and by the way, for any women listeners who are thinking about venturing into dating younger men, if you don't already, you know, um, as a woman on these sites, oh my God, incoming. I respond to maybe 1% of all the approaches I get. I think the reason I'm taken aback is because it is still, even today in 2025, in our society, the case that older man, younger woman, no one bats an eyelid. Older woman, younger man, still socially unacceptable. And I've dated younger men on a spectrum from the ones who are really happy to be seen out with me in public, will correct the waiter when they think he's my son. And I've dated younger men who are terrified their friends and family will find out that they're seeing older women. And if we didn't have that ludicrously, double standards, gender biased perspective, the world would be much more aware of how many younger men there are out there into older women, and vice versa, by the way, in the same way there are so many bloody older men out there into younger women. And by the way, also young women into older men, which is absolutely fine.
So, in terms of loving them and falling in love with any of your partners, is that something that you feel and you relate to? I know you said something about love that you don't really quite
Yeah.
believe in it.
No, I'm that very rare person who does not want to be in love. As I said, I'm not a relationship person. I've no desire whatsoever to be in a relationship. I adore being single. I love being on my own. And by the way, I think there are many more people like me who've absolutely had that understanding obfuscated by family, friends, and popular culture. There are many people living lives they don't really want to live because it's what their parents wanted them to do, what all their friends were suddenly doing simultaneously around them, getting married, having kids, what popular culture tells people they should do. And, this is why I say to people, honestly, stop, take a long, hard look inside yourself and ask yourself what would really make you happy, because it may not be what the world tells you will make you happy. So yeah, but obviously when I was younger, teens, 20s, I thought I was in love. It was infatuation. I'm eternally grateful that every boyfriend I had at Oxford dumped me at my university, because at that age, in my late teens, I thought I was in love with them. I would have happily married them, and I would have willingly ruined my life by doing so. Somewhere in a parallel universe are divorce papers with my name on them. So no, I am blissfully happy on my own. That this is why dating younger men works so well for me. And I don't want to be in love, and I do not want to be in a relationship.
But you have a platform that's make love,
Yeah,
not porn.
yeah.
So you obviously love love.
Yeah, because obviously I see it all around me. I mean, my parents had a phenomenal marriage. They were madly in love, and they were married for 60 years. It's entirely possible to have that role model in front of you and go, "That's great. I don't want that."
Amazing. Was there a moment in time where you chose that for yourself?
Honestly, nothing conscious. I mean, this is the result of 65 years of life. The older you get, the more sensible you get. That's experience. But there was undoubtedly a moment. So, as women, from the moment we're born, we are told that our entire life is a search for the one. Popular culture tells us that. The bedtime stories that we read tell us that. Our families tell us that. So, through our teens and our 20s, this is so internalized. Every social event you go to, and I'm going to speak as a straight woman here, will he be there? And what that results in is vast amounts of time wasted glamming yourself up, choosing outfits. When you go to that event, this is a dynamic that forces you to compete with other women, and I deplore that. And then at the end of the night, you schlep home going, "Oh, he wasn't there again tonight. Maybe next time." So I was totally susceptible to this, But again, by the way, especially growing up in Asia with a Chinese mother, where the culture is very much, a woman's goal is to get married, have children. Sometime in my early 30s or thereabouts, I just went, "Fuck this for a game of soldiers. I'm not looking for the one anymore." Oh my God, the liberation, the relief. I could go to social events and just enjoy myself. And so I absolutely consciously went, "I'm not doing that anymore." And over time just went, I not only do I not want a relationship, I actively absolutely bloody love being on my own, living on my own, being in full control of whatever I want to do. And by the way, I have 4 nieces, 2 nephews, and sorry, 3 nieces, 3 nephews, and I can 4 goddaughters, 1 godson. And they can all testify that I am trying to disseminate this wisdom to the younger generation. So, I was at a dinner some time back with a very dear friend who has 2 daughters, and the younger daughter's at university, has just fallen madly in love. Telling me all about her boyfriend, showing me photos of him, and I went, "Oh, he looks absolutely lovely. I'm so happy for you. Do not marry him." I've said to my nieces, my goddaughters, never ever change the path of your life for a man or a woman, depending on your sexuality. But literally, you know, um, so many people have gone down paths that weren't really the ones they chose because they thought they were in love. And by the way, many of those paths have demonstrated a few years later, because you are growing, you're developing, you're becoming a different person, that that was not the path you should have gone down, because those relationships, those marriages did not last. And so, and by the way, obviously there are people for whom that works tremendously well, my parents included, but I just think we need many more role models to reassure the people who secretly do feel like this, that it's really okay to be on your own and you can have a bloody good time doing that.
So, is there a balance at all? And I say this because I grew up with a very strong role model as a mother as well. So, my dad became paralyzed from the waist down when I was 14. And I can remember my mum sat there and she said to me, Sarah, never ever rely on a man. And she meant this not, not with ill intent.
Mm,
She was
mm,
like, be your own provider.
yep,
She could
yep,
put food on the table for us. She had to
mm.
become his carer, looking after us 3 girls. And life taught us many of these lessons of the importance of independence and free choice. And my mum will, if there's ever an emotional moment, she goes, I didn't bring you up like this. Come on, fix up. We've got this. And she's very much of that kind of way. You've got this. I brought you up with a certain way where you're not bending your life for anyone. You're not, and she would drill that into me even to this day. Right. Now, what about if you're a woman who's listening in and actually you are independent and you have this independent space within yourself, but you do want companionship, you do want a relationship? Is there a way where this can be balanced and not create division with men?
Absolutely. And by the way, Sarah, I completely concur with your mother. A man is not a financial strategy. But what I think is really important today is, you absolutely, have to have that conversation with any partner you choose, and you want to choose a partner who will be fully supportive. And by the way, this is something that I've been talking to my own industry, advertising, about for years, because advertising is a very powerful force in popular culture. And so I say to my industry, we have a huge opportunity to reinvent aspirational culture. And I say that to my industry because we invented aspiration. We made people want things. But, back in the Mad Men days, we made people want material things. We made you want the right watch, the right car, the right house. Today, we have a huge opportunity to make people want things that will improve their lives. And because of that, will build a stronger emotional bond with the brands and the advertising that actually sees the opportunity in doing that. So I've said to my industry for years, you know, we we deal in stereotypes, and so we have perpetuated the heteronormative stereotype of a marriage, a relationship, as man as strong, confident breadwinner, woman as warm, caring, nurturing homemaker. I want to see us represent the aspirational relationship role model today, which is a partnership of equals. Because today, whatever gender you are, both halves of a couple work because they have to, because of the economy. That requires new forms of negotiations to who does the housework, who does the childcare, what happens when one half of the couple earns more than the other, what happens when one half of the couple has a job the other doesn't. And we have a huge opportunity in advertising, for example, to make straight men aspire to be the one who stays at home, to be the house husband, as opposed to what actually happens today because of cultural dynamics, which is that men who do that are equally despised by men and women alike. So, I was talking about this in a presentation to the advertising industry just a couple of weeks ago, and I was quoting the wonderful American comedian Ali Wong, who has a number of brilliant comedy specials on Netflix. I highly recommend our listeners check them out. And the one I'm thinking of is from 2018. It's called Hard Knock Wife. So Ali Wong is Asian, and she cites the fact that she earns more than her husband does, and her mother got very worried. Her Asian mother got very worried about this, and is worried that her husband will leave her because she earns more than he does. And Ali Wong says to her mother, the only kind of man who would leave a woman because she earns more than he does is the kind of man who does not like free money. And that gets a huge laugh in the audience. And I cite that as an example of we can reframe this with humor and empathy to make men go, yeah, I want free money. and so I just think that there is, an opportunity today, especially with the new generation of men, to absolutely talk very frankly and candidly about the partnership that you want, and to find a partner who will be totally into that and supportive of it.
So you say the new generation of men. Would you say that is the men that are in their 20s, predominantly that Gen Z? Is that the new generation that's coming through that are open to this?
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, YouGov has just released a very wide-ranging study into young men in the UK today, and because there is this perception that misogyny and bias are entrenched in Gen Z men. And this study is enormously reassuring to read. And by the way, I'll send you the link so you can include it with the show notes,
Please.
because that is actually not the case. And by the way, I will say this is also my own experience on the ground meeting young men, not just the ones, I meet and date, but I have many young male fans. I have many opportunities to talk to young men. Earlier this year, I had an amazing evening. There is this incredible nonprofit here in the US called the National League of Young Men. It's nationwide. It has chapters all over America. It's an organization for high school aged boys, which here in America is 14 to 18-year-olds, and their mothers. And the mothers run each chapter, and they schedule programming that is designed to help, outside of what they learn at school, to bring these teenage boys up to be fine, upstanding members of and leaders in their community. So the mothers of the Greenwich, Connecticut chapter of the National League of Young Men earlier this year asked me to come and talk to 50 high school teenage boys about Make Love Not Porn. Full credit to them. And Greenwich, Connecticut is a suburb outside New York. So they sent a car for me. They held this in one of their homes where there's a big living area they could cram 50 teenage boys into. And they said to the boys, okay, we're now going to close the doors. We're going to go into another part of the house. We hear nothing. We see nothing. We know nothing. We're leaving you alone with Cindy. This is a phenomenal opportunity. Take full advantage of it. And I did a short presentation about Make Love Not Porn, why I started it, everything I wanted them to know. And then I opened it up to Q&A. And obviously this is a room full of teenage boys, deathly silence. Then one boy asked a question, then another one, and then the floodgates opened. And we just had a wonderful conversation, very free and frank. They were absolutely lovely. And, it's all the classic teenage things, insecure about dating. What do girls really like? Do girls really like big cocks? I was able to land the message of, no, it's not what you've got, it's what you do with it. And so I do a lot of interacting with young men. And I can tell you that, the clickbait in the media is not true of all of them.
And what would you say that clickbait is?
That, all younger men are part of the manosphere. All younger men think Andrew Tate is God. I posted a couple of videos recently. I posted 2 videos responding to the Channel 4 Bonnie Blue documentary, and I encourage our audience to find them. They're on my Instagram page and on my LinkedIn. I posted an overall perspective from me, and then I posted a second one that I wanted to make the point about, which was, I said, no, contrary to what the media would have you believe, it is not every teenage boy's ambition to lose his virginity in a 1,000-man, line with Bonnie Blue. And I say that because, so I've been dating young men for a very long time. And what I mean by that is I've met many young men. I've not dated all of them. I've met young men, and we have not taken it further. And in some cases, that has been because those young men were completely fucked up by porn. And by the way, Sarah, it's very important to say, I've been saying this for years. The issue isn't porn. The issue is that we do not talk openly and honestly about sex in the real world. Because if we did, people would bring a real world mindset to what is simply performative produced entertainment. But I have been, especially given what I do, a therapist in these dates, these conversations with young men. So, I met up with one young man, I think he would have been 20 at the time, who had been really messed up by porn. He told me that he lost his virginity at the age of 16 with a couple he met on a message board, this is years ago, who were looking for a young man to join them in a threesome. And I said to him, "Are you happy you lost your virginity in that way?" And he said no. He obviously wanted to have sex for real, but actually that was not what he really wanted his first time to be. One of the younger men I do date and have been dating very happily for a number of years, he told me that he lost his virginity when he was 16 years old. He was in the shower and his best friend's mother got in with him. And in the moment, you're not going to protest that and hormones take over. But I said to him, are you happy you lost your virginity in that way? No, he wasn't. He would have liked to have lost his virginity with someone he was madly in love with. Okay. And so, this very stereotyped, one-dimensional perspective that the media absolutely perpetuate because it's great clickbait headlines, is not the case. I made another video about the young man who is making hundreds of thousands from an app called Quitter, which is helping young men quit porn. And I said, I have a huge problem with this because what he is trading on is the guilt, shame, and embarrassment that we've all been taught to feel around sex and that young men have been taught to feel about porn. And that is the complete opposite of what we're doing at Make Love Not Porn. We are taking the shame, guilt, and embarrassment out of sex. It's why I call Make Love Not Porn a shame changer. Because, half the problem with people who think they're porn addicts is the shame and the guilt. One of the things we hear most often from our members at Make Love Not Porn is the word guilt-free. Our members write to us and say, thank you for the first guilt-free sexual experience I've ever had. I remember one young man left a wonderful comment on a Make Love Not Porn Stars video. He said, I'm 23, and this is the first time I've ever masturbated and smiled at myself in the mirror afterwards. You're amazing. I love you. I love you. I love you. It's so adorable. But that is what we are spearheading. We are spearheading the social sex revolution. The revolutionary part is not the sex. It's the fact we're finally making it social, taking the guilt, shame, and embarrassment out of it.
And you said quite publicly that you're not anti-porn in itself. So if someone is choosing to be a more performative porn star and be in the porn industry, you're not anti that either.
Oh my God, no, not in the slightest. In fact, Sarah, when we launched Make Love Not Porn, we have a category that I wanted there from launch. So I asked my friends in the porn industry to help me with it. I have many friends in porn, and they very kindly did. So Make Love Not Porn is the place on the internet where porn stars share videos of the sex they have offset in the real world. Because porn stars have real world sex too that is completely different from what they perform professionally. And so our, straight porn star friends, gay porn star friends, trans porn star friends share videos on Make Love Not Porn of the sex they have in their real world relationships with their real world partners, and talk about how different that is from what they perform professionally. Because who better to demonstrate the difference than the people who absolutely know the difference? So no, not in the slightest. And I've been for many years. Because, while Make Love Not Porn is not porn, as our tagline says, we are pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. I've been a champion and advocate for the porn industry. because we all battle the same obstacles. And I want to see all of that change for my, porn industry friends as much as for myself.
And so, what have been some of the negative impacts you've seen through the men that you've spoken to, you've dated, you obviously counsel and have been therapists to as well? What's the most negative and common impacts you've seen of porn?
Again, I want to be really clear about this, Sarah. It's not the impact of porn. It's the impact of the lack of sex education, the lack of open, healthy dialogue around sex, and the lack of, until Make Love Not Porn came along, any real world counterpoint and complement to porn. Because we are not a competitor with porn. We are the only real world complement. As I said, I draw the Hollywood movie documentary analogy deliberately because people like watching Hollywood movies. People also like watching documentaries. Sometimes they move for a movie, sometimes they move for a documentary. That's how we work. But I can absolutely give you examples of my own experience. So I dated a young man years ago. I think he was 21 at the time. So he began watching porn when he was 10 or 11. He had spent years jerking off to porn before he ever had sex IRL when he was 16, 17. And there is actually a term for this. Dr. Ian Kerner, who is a psychologist and therapist over here in the US, coined it, called idiosyncratic masturbatory syndrome. And that is when, as a man, you become so used to wanking, to porn. When I met this young man, he was completely unable to orgasm inside a woman, in a woman's mouth, or even in a woman's hand. Okay. And, that is obviously in my case, again, this was, dating him casually, although I was very fond of him and we've known each other for many years. We're friends on Facebook. But obviously for relationships, that's distressing. And obviously if you want to have children, that's highly problematic. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's one example. Literally, he could only come during sex by jerking himself off. Obviously I've run the full gamut of, experiencing porn tropes. Again, and again, bear in mind, these are lovely young men who are a bit nervous about getting to bed with an older woman, want to impress me, think they've got to break out the porn moves, So I've been choked, strangulated non-consensually. That was a deeply unpleasant experience. Because ultimately, yes, in the kink community, that is absolutely managed very carefully, but there is no safe way of doing that. Ultimately, fundamentally, just basically assumptions that all women like this when that is not the case. And again, my background of 40 years working in advertising absolutely feeds into how I designed Make Love Not Porn, because I've spent 40 years working in the business of communication. I know, therefore, that anything great in life and business is born out of great communication. Sex is no different. Great sex is born out of great communication. And so communicate. What you like, what you don't like. Every sexual partner you will ever have is different. And that's the fun of it, finding that out and reinventing sex anew with every partner, whether they're casual or whether they're committed.
And so you are now launching something new with Make Love Not Porn, which sort of feeds into this education piece. Is this something you can talk about publicly?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And by the way, what is very depressing, Sarah, is that it's not new. I had this idea 10 years ago because parents and teachers began reaching out to me from day one of Make Love Not Porn, begging me for the 0 to 18 and beyond sex education extension of what we do. And so 10 years ago, I came up with the idea of makelovenotporn.academy, which is a global aggregator hub for the best of the world sex education content that is already out there, but is being blocked, censored, and deplatformed everywhere. Because in the years I've been building Make Love Not Porn, I built up a huge network all around the world of brilliant sex educator friends who face all the same problems I do. Their content gets blocked on Facebook and Instagram. Their accounts get suspended. They're banned from promoting themselves. So I was able to raise a small amount of equity crowdfunding last year, failed to hit target, but enough, some bridge funding, to build Make Love Not Porn Academy. We've just completed the build of the platform. We have just invited over 100 brilliant educators into the platform to populate it with their content. We've asked them to finish doing that by the end of this month. We're going to test the hell out of it. We hope to be able to release Make Love Not Porn Academy in the next month or so. And what we're doing at the Academy is we are organizing the world's sex education information to make it universally accessible and useful. That is a deliberate paraphrase of Google's original mission statement: organize the world's information to make it universally accessible and useful. Because today in this area, Google is not doing that. The algorithm is biased, it's censoring. Parents, teachers, young people cannot find what they're looking for when they search for it. So we are building the Google of sex ed. And I encourage our listeners to go to makelovenotporn.academy, check out the holding page we have there, enter your email for us to notify you when we launch.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Cindy. You've been awesome, and we wish you well. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.